the advent of climate change, the question of food security comes up, and not just that, but with a whole bunch of other factors like ecological overdraft and fair amount of messy bit in the unrest, particularly at the political level. It's very challenging for people to stay well in the world. If you look at it from a larger scale, we've got 7-point-something billion people in the world, and one of the most disturbing aspects of that is that we waste a lot of food. We waste something like $31 billion worth of food in Canada. 47% of that is in the home. Worldwide, it's $680 billion US in industrial countries. It's a massive amount of food wastage. My name is Donna Jones. I'm the host of the Insight to Action podcast. It is a program that is designed for both business innovation innovators and also for helping to shape an understanding of the evolution of consciousness in the world today. Michael Moll is with me today. He's got a startup company which is called My Green Spaces, and his company tells really, I think, the tale that is incredibly interesting for everyone who would like to take some small steps to look after themselves from a food point of view, but also from a wellness point of view. So, Michael, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Donna.
Let's get started with talking about how did your startup get started? What was the inspiration behind it?
My startup was inspired by some actions I took with my girlfriend, now fiancée, but originally, I guess really was inspired from my childhood. I grew up in Kenya. My grandparents live in the city on a beautiful 5-acre property that they refused to subdivide as everybody rushed to create townhomes. And they actually have a combined around 1,000 acres of farmland spread across the country, the biggest farm being about 700 acres, a meat ranch, but they have flower farms, strawberry farms, traditional cash crops like corn, bean, maize, etc. And so I was so lucky to grow up in the city on 5 acres with avocados and guava and corn in the backyard and berries. And, I didn't take it for granted, but I definitely felt blessed, and that was my normal. And then I came to Canada to study business and my minor in sustainability. I came here on a scholarship and, really opened my mind to the challenges that we had globally in sustainability and even in the West. And so I started growing food with my girlfriend. At the time, we grew food for 4 years, and it was amazing. We started with our little patio, had a small herb planter that had mint, oregano, thyme, basil, and the mint just cannibalized and took over. So that was our first little mistake. Had to have a little mojito party to get rid of all the mint. What was amazing with that garden is we were able to really meet our community. We had it in the front yard of our apartment building, and we got to meet all of our neighbors. And that was really something special to me to see what the power of gardening was. Secondary. First was we were able to grow food for a month and a half and eat out of the garden for that month and a half, barely buying anything from the grocery store, maybe some tomatoes. And so that was really a powerful moment. And then learning that a lot of people coming into our garden, because it was in the front yard of our building, were either struggling or were interested in getting involved or were too scared to get involved. And I just started seeing a pattern of fear and barriers and support need for new gardeners. And I also started noticing the age range. Like a lot of young people were getting interested in growing their food just like myself. So I thought, how would we help lots of people do this? I already had experience with startups, starting 2 startups where we developed apps. And so I thought an app would be a great way to have a master gardener in your pocket that could go around and help millions of people grow their own food. And so I sketched it out, and then I went forward towards building a team in 2014.
I appreciate the backstory on that. Where were you in Kenya? What city? Was it Nairobi or?
I was in Nairobi, Kenya.
Yeah, I've been there. I know that city, so that's remarkable that that's the experience you had growing up in that city, because the other side of that city is quite noisy, like any city for that matter. I too grew up in the country, and we had what was then termed an acre of garden, and we lived on that all winter long. And so I really appreciate what you're doing with this. Now, what are you finding as drawing people to gardening? First of all, you've talked about connection, which is incredible. person to person connection as opposed to connection through Facebook or the tech. What are you finding are the values of your client base and those people that are stepping up to do some gardening?
Yeah, so we really find that different people have different whys. Why am I gardening? And we say that you might come in for a different reason, but you're going to get out with majority of the benefits. And so it's like yoga as well. And so what we really found was people wanted to be connected back to their food. They didn't know how it was grown. They didn't know where it was coming from. They didn't know how to grow it. They didn't know what good food is. And so that yearning to be reconnected and knowing that there's something, off with our food system. Not all of it, but some things. So that internal desire is what really gets me excited, is that we're not pulling people into this. People are starting to discover that they want to do this. The second thing is having that skill set. I think there's some people who, gardening is an amazing hobby. People who do it are very passionate about spreading. And so people are looking at, I want to pick up a skill this year. I want to be outside more. I want to eat local. I want to impact the environment positively. And so you see all these trends, vegetarianism, veganism, environmental movements, conscious movements are adding to people to say, how can I be more mindful? How can I can make a better impact on the planet? And then, they funnel into gardening as one of these options as well. The other thing is growing with your kids. People really find it, to transfer that knowledge. Maybe it skipped a generation for them. They grew up with their grandparents or parents, and then they became city workers. The biggest thing that we found so far is it hasn't been about saving money. There is a subset of people who are doing that, but the initial drive of the early adopters, at least what we're seeing, is that passion, is those, they want to live out their values, they want to reconnect, they want to be positive on the planet, and then saving money happens. But as we both, will discuss, it's not just your private savings that happens. It's the net benefit on the whole system when you grow locally, when you grow your own, when you grow your community. And I think those numbers we don't really take into account a lot.
No, exactly. That is absolutely true. Tell me more about how gardening contributes to well-being, both personally and on a community basis. What have you seen there?
So what we've seen that's really exciting is that gardens grow community and gardens grow people. And so as you garden, you become a better person in that it is a growth experience in leadership, in compassion, consistency. And so you show up every day to your garden, you put in care and attention, and the garden is a great feedback loop for that. So the second thing is just the sheer mindfulness of having a living system, a complex system, lots of moving parts, and having to be present with that and think through it. In fact, they did a TED talk. This gentleman had 30 years of research, and he asked, why do people live to be 100 centurions? And there was a great correlation between that and people having gardens. Because when you have a garden, you're outside more. It means you're social more. You have something to get up for in the morning, on the weekends. Probably eating more locally. You're probably eating healthier, and you feel that great connection. So that's what we've seen so far in our customers and in the research that's coming from around the world.
It makes a lot of sense because I know in France it was originally a legal requirement to have a garden in your backyard. And when I'm in France, I'm visiting small villages where the 95-year-old man is still tending his garden in his little backyard. And it's just a beautiful thing. It's a remarkable thing.
It's beautiful, and I think France is one of the great examples of an agricultural system that's still very, very rooted. Because what I know from my experience in Kenya is that we were all farmers. We were all farmers for a very long time, majority of people. And so slowly as we industrialized different parts of the world, we stepped away from that. But we see the great impact that's had on communities. And so the future is not, let's go back to land per se. It's how do we bring that into the cities? Because the rural-urban migration is massive. Yeah, it's seen less in the West because it happened a while back. But in places like Kenya, it's a mass exodus from the rural areas. And so when, with more than half of the world population living in cities, That's our big challenge, is that cities need to feed themselves within themselves. And it's completely possible because there are more lawns in America than cornfields. And so the hypothesis is using the capacity and the space that we have will show us how we can actually create these sustainable cities. And that's what's really exciting, is unlocking the potential in cities and the potential in people around urban agriculture.
Tremendous opportunity. The other thing that what you've just said, though, triggers for me is the transportation. I know certainly in this area, if there is an interruption to the transportation system, which, and because we're on the coast, we're susceptible to this lovely earthquake that's sitting off on the west side of Canada and the United States, we have 3 days before the shelves are bare. Are other cities in that same position where there is no backup aside from what you might grow if there's an interruption to the transportation system?
So that's really a really interesting point. A lot of cities are like that because we built our cities based on advanced transportation. Back in the day, most cities were, built on very easy to access areas, port cities near big river systems. But now we have towns like in Colorado that are only accessible because of the invention of like massive train systems. And so the actual food insecurity there on grains and a few other things, it's actually 3 weeks, like global supply. And so the shock not only comes if some area was cut off, because I think something that's really interesting is with the cut off areas is we've unfortunately learned how to create relief aid for areas. And I mean, during times of war in the 20th century, and we experienced that. But when what we're experiencing and over time is where the supply chain itself gets affected. And that is at the point of production. So, because we're so deeply interconnected, rice shortages in one part of the world causes revolutions in another part of the world. The trading of different things as commodities, so quinoa, for example, and that price fluctuating, affecting how locals can afford food there and things. So it was interesting. In America, they had a shortage of salad greens because the harvest, and there's a lot of mildew on one part of the harvest because they grow 80% of the stuff in Arizona in the winter, and they grow the rest of it in the summer in California. But because it was raining so much in California, it was delayed. And so you have this shortage, and something similar happened in 2 European countries. This was this February. And so America was exporting salad greens to Europe. You can see how interconnected it all is, and so where the shortages can come. And so really resiliency is about growing local, having a diversified import strategy as well, and just understanding that we are dependent on each other. And I don't think it's terrible to be dependent. I think interconnectivity around the world is amazing, and it's opened up a lot of great things, but we just have to sort of see the risk layer involved with that as well.
Well, and I think inherent in that is the principle of interdependence, the principle of all living things, which is the success of the one and the success of the whole are directly tied. So I think I really appreciate that insight, because it does give people, here's the real world experience of how our food is all connected. I know my daughter and I were traveling, doing a backpacking trip in Peru in 2012. We stayed in a small village, and we walked into the kitchen, which is, a dirt floor and a wooden table. And all around the inside of the kitchen were sacks of quinoa. And I mean sacks of quinoa. And of course here, most other places you walk in to try and purchase that, and it's expensive. So to see sacks of it, and she says, yeah, she says the mother, she says, yeah, we've got enough quinoa here to feed the world, pretty much. But it was it was hilarious because it was an oversupply of quinoa in the kitchen, whereas worldwide we're looking at it as So I just thought that was absolutely hilarious.
That's really funny. The oversupply of quinoa in the one kitchen.
In that kitchen.
Yeah, exactly, and you're right. And it is how we see ourselves as a collective in the world, and how we're able to move, the distribution problems of, we've created the system. And so that's why I'm very positive, because these are systems of man. And so we can change these systems for the betterment of more people. And so, it's about governments and companies and private citizens cooperating and, showing leadership in how we distribute wealth, how we distribute food, how we educate, etc. And I think it's a great time. When we first met, you brought up that point, is that there are companies who have been doing this, individuals have been doing this, organizations have been doing this. And now with social media and the internet, we can start seeing each other. Even if we're not in the same industry, we're in the same movement of value-driven, purpose-driven business and private citizenry in the world. We're starting to see each other and seeing that there are a lot of us around and a lot of great initiatives. And there's a lot of cause to be happy about what's happening.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. There's absolutely no question about that. Now, the other thing that you have done that I think is really interesting and exciting, especially for today, is to take something that appears to rule the world, which is technology, and merge it with something that feeds the world, which is food. Let's talk a bit about how you see the interface between tech and food and connection.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really great question. What I'm seeing so far is that technology and the way we now have it with this very personalized device, the mobile phone, it allows us to meet people where they are. And I think that's the first thing that we realized in My Green Space is it's a no judgment zone of your ability to garden. I know from where I'm from, and people would make fun of you if you'd never dug in the soil, or you'd never loaded some manure or fed some chickens or milked a cow, or those sort of things. But now we're so far removed from that in some places in the world, especially in the West, that getting to someone on their phone, they may not make it to a workshop. They may never have been to a farm, but they definitely now know how to use this really great advanced piece of technology that brings them data, lets them output data to the world and connect. And from that place, we can really start them on this journey towards becoming an expert in growing food. And I thought that's really, really cool. The second thing is that technology is being used, at least personal technology, for, not as a distraction engine, but as a medium for messaging, advertising, etc. And in the old way. I think the new way of advertising in media is storytelling, not interruption marketing through ads, etc. And so, we haven't seen it used to its full potential. So I really see things like My Green Space showing the next generation that, it's not just immersive game environments that are useful with technology. We can use technology to get back outside. And, so when we do workshop with kids, they're able to use our app, they're able to learn in the classroom, a lot of digital media, but then we want them to be planting in the soil. We want them to be setting up a physical garden. We want the practical side to get in there as well. And so I really like that fact that we're able to use the screen to get people outside.
I love the innovative thinking there, because it takes an unlikely partner, which is technology, and matches it with the goal, which is to get outside. I know in some schools they have gardens, and what I've noticed about that is that they treat it as a project. So they don't treat it as a value. They treat it as a project. So you'll have these garden beds that'll all be built out, and then you'll walk by there, and no one will have eaten the food. It's all gone to seed. They haven't looked after it. They haven't cared for it. So they've gotten part of the equation, but not the complete equation. And I think, I'm hoping anyway, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I'm hoping that this is about instilling values and connection to the land as much as anything else, because we've lost that in a fairly large way.
Yes, and really thank you for bringing that up. It really, really is about that. Gardens on your patio, on your balcony, it's a bit of a Trojan horse, but in a good way, is that we are seeding the opportunity for people to experience really great values around food and connection. We're bringing to them so that all the barriers have been removed, and we're showing them what a relationship, what communicating with plants and being there really feels like and is really about, and giving them a piece of earth where they are. If you're on the 37th floor of a skyscraper and you have kids there, they probably barely ever get a chance to go on the grass if they're in a downtown area going to school that has gravel. So really connecting people and showing them what's possible, what is a climate. If you grow indoors, completely controlled environment, which is a really great thing for food security, and we need to explore at all the different ways of food production. But, when you grow outside with your environment, then you sync with the climate, and then you get a very, very mindful presence. You start to understand, oh, that's what a hot day looks like. That's what climate change feels like when things are late. That's et cetera, et cetera. So really, really a great tool for doing that. We said, like I said in the beginning, gardens, is a leadership challenge. Gardening is. And so when you can do that first step of planting a garden, but then going back to it every time and taking care of it is something that is what unlocks your connection to the land. And it's a personal journey rather than us leaning over your shoulder. And it's a bit different to a few things that have been exposed to young people now, is that really this is your own game in your own time. And the lessons that you're going to learn are going to be you to come back and show us. And so that's why I think the reverb of what we're doing is, we're pushing out there and really helping people get started and get set up. But the way people are coming back, one lady who can eat out of her garden for 2 weeks without buying groceries, who now believes in her own skills and capacities as a person to be with the environment, that's amazing. And what she's now going to be able to go do in her community and inspire other people, because that's what we really see is that the people inspire the people to garden. This isn't about us showing celebrities or those sort of influencers. Our key influencers are the new gardeners who are winning because they were vulnerable, they tried, they persisted, and they won.
Well, it's a wonderful way of looking at it. I know I've run into people in the boomer category who, when I mention that, they say, oh, it's too much trouble. I can't go to the trouble. And literally, they'd pave their yards. Not quite, but, they put all those stones on them so they don't have to have grass. And, of course, people forget grass produces oxygen, so you kind of need that. But it's just, it's a fascinating mindset. How do you approach that, or do you?
At this point, we're early stage. We have 5,000 downloads on the app. It's really exciting because we're getting on average about 40 downloads a day now organically. And we're talking to a lot of people, but these, the participation in gardening right now in America, they estimated about 30 million people in the States. So, just under 10% of the population. And really that's what's growing incrementally. When we come across the people who don't want to garden, we see it as, they may not be the people that we break down first. The main thing for that is, what is their why? What is their why not, and what would change them around? But because we're still in the early stages of helping this influx of new gardeners, because there's so many people who do want to do this, a good stat that I can drop is that, there are 30 million to 40 million gardeners in the United States and Canada. But that number has been mainly the boomers, and in the last 10 years, an influx of about 10 million new gardeners, all in the millennial generation. And that's what's really driving the growth. And it's all these young people who are waking up to different ideas of how they want to live, and gardening is one of the pieces in the puzzle that they want to participate in, and they're going out there and they're seeking information and services that mirror the other ways that they're doing these things. And so they have an app for dating, they have an app for their car share, they have blah, blah, blah. Gardening is just something that follows into that as a delivery method of how we reach these people. And so, to answer the question of the people who are lagging behind, I think that it's going to be their neighbors showing them that, hey, you know what, that paved lawn, that's great, but look what we can do, and look how manageable it is for us to have, 3 or 4 raised beds and this and that, and et cetera. And I think that's where we can turn those people over. But they're definitely not. We're at the early adopter innovator stage of, really this new urban agriculture renaissance.
And that's the millennials.
That's the millennials, right?
I think that's fantastic. It's extremely exciting, and I think it counterbalances a lot of what you hear in the business press, certainly, which is about the tech addiction and all of that stuff. So I'm really delighted. You are heading off to Dragon's Den, I hear?
Yep, we're heading off to Dragon's Den next week. I'm going to be in Toronto, and we're going to be filming on Wednesday in the Den. So it's going to be really exciting.
And do you know when that will be broadcast?
You don't get guaranteed to be on the show because it is a live filming. I mean, they do, they cut it together, but it's not, it is what happens in the Den. We're just really excited to participate in this. It's an honor to be to be called out, and we took the chance on it, and I think it's going to be a great experience all around. So I'm excited to hear their opinions and their inputs, and to engage with them. So I think they do have a great range. They have millennials and boomers, and it's going to be great just to have that discussion around what does food mean to them, what does urban agriculture mean to them, what is the growing and being a gardener, and learning about their challenges and ideas, and then seeing how what we've done fuses into that. And I think there's going to be an exciting moment for them.
Well, I think it's tremendous. Now, we haven't talked about Gen X. Where do they fit in the demographic of gardeners?
Yeah, so I think that's, the one thing with the demographics is that, when we say millennial, the Gen X really is, depending on how old their kids are, it's different motivations. So, for example, we have boomers who are downsizing, and so they're looking for new solutions and to grow in smaller spaces. We have Gen X who could be, wanting to have something for their kids, wanting to finally, they've moved into a bigger house. It's time for them to do that. So we know that the influx has been millennials, and I think that definitely bleeds into Gen X. But it's it's the sort of conscious private citizen is really the bigger overarching idea that we can't structure people just in their demographics. I think the real structure is socioeconomics. Do they have the space, time, money, etc. to participate? Do they have the desire because of where they are and like what the laws of their city? And so it's a very, when we do workshops, we get a spread of all across the people that are getting involved in this. And what we want to show through our app is that the community is that. You can have a boomer and a millennial, and we're not separated like that. I know that marketing, statistics, etc. does that, but it's we don't see it that different. We see these as people who desire to grow, and we see their pain points and their value propositions, but they're all part of the same community to us, at least.
Hallelujah! Thank you. That's brilliant. And anything you want to add and share with listeners?
What we've done at My Green Space is stage one of helping people grow their own food with confidence. And so what we've created is an app that is a master garden in your pocket. You download it. It takes your location, which means it has 36 towns, cities, villages in North America. That's Canada, United States. That's Alaska to Miami, Vancouver to Newfoundland. It shows you all the vegetables that can grow in your city. And then you start to do a visual plan of your garden. It asks you how much sunlight, do you live on a rooftop, do you have a balcony, a condo, etc. How much space does your garden have? And then from there, it shows you a new set of plants that will definitely grow in your new base constraint. So a balcony in Miami with a couple hours of sun, here's what you can grow. And you add those to your box. It then companion plants and shows you how to space each of those plants and which should go next to each other. And then you get daily reminders of how to plant, how to water, how to harvest. If you run into any problems, organic solutions for dealing with pests and diseases. So with that and supplying you with the supplies that you need to get started, we really think that we've created the first iteration of a platform that can truly help people grow with confidence. And it's a free download. It's a free app to use. So I encourage people to occupy their gardens and their living spaces, turning them into green spaces, and they'll be very pleasantly surprised by what gardening gives back to them. Go to mygreenspace.co, mygreenspace.co, and it's an iOS and Android app, free iOS and Android. We will be bringing it back to the web next year, but right now it is fully mobile based.
Fantastic. Michael, thank you very much for being on the program. And I know there's plenty in here for people to take a hold of that and start growing. I just want to add a story of my own. When my daughter was very little, I built some garden beds in the driveway to show her where her food came from. And we had a fascinating situation. We had kids coming up, and this is in a city, of course, but we had kids coming up who would not eat the lettuce out of the garden because it wasn't real lettuce, the real lettuce you found in the grocery store. We had another situation where a mom wouldn't eat the lettuce because it had dirt on it. And that was a real telling indicator. I mean, my daughter's now almost 30, so a long time ago, and that kind of disconnection has continued. So I really hope that with the ideas that Michael has given you, go to his app, try it out, get started. on growing, no matter who you are or where you live, something can be done. So I'm very excited by what we talked about today. When you listen to this, Michael will have already shot his episode, and I will be in Montreal speaking at Spark the Change Montreal, both on evolving leadership consciousness as kind of a TED style talk, and also running a workshop on decision making in ambiguity and uncertainty. So I'm looking forward to that. Please share this program and help me get the podcast out to as many people as possible. Thank you very much for listening in, and go to my website for more information from insight to action.com. I also write for the Huffington Post blog there monthly. Got a chapter coming out in Erwin Laszlo's new book on the intelligence of the cosmos that's about the new purpose of business, and specifically it's about networking, epigenetics, and emotion in the workplace. And I wrote Decision Making for Dummies. So there you go. That's it. So if I can be of help to you with decision making or advancing your skills to work with unfamiliar territory, please reach out. On Twitter, it's at @EPDawna, DAWNA _Jones. Thanks so much.